My name's Chloe, I'm 21 years old, and I need to tell you about the blood donation clinic that was feeding me to something in the basement. Something that had been waiting underground for decades, getting hungrier and hungrier, until I walked in with the exact type of blood it craved. 3 months ago, I was drowning in student loans and credit card debt. My part-time campus job barely covered groceries, let alone rent. That's when I saw a flyer posted on a campus bulletin board. Vital Life Blood Services, $200 per donation, up to twice weekly. Special compensation for rare blood types. Most blood donation centers pay maybe $50, so $200 seemed too good to be true. But I was desperate. My landlord was threatening eviction, and I had exactly $30 in my bank account. The clinic was in an older part of town, housed in a converted Victorian mansion that felt more like a medical museum than a modern facility. The receptionist, Mrs. Henley, was elderly and spoke in whispers, as if loud noises might disturb something. "You have very special blood, dear," she said after reviewing my initial screening results. AB negative with some unusual markers we rarely see. "Our clients will be very pleased." She said clients in a way that made my skin crawl, but $200 was $200. I should have asked who these clients were. I should have wondered why the clinic had no other donors whenever I visited. I should have questioned why they always wanted me to come at night, when the building was eerily quiet except for strange sounds coming from below. But I was young, broke, and desperate. And something downstairs was very, very hungry. My first donation was scheduled for 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. The clinic was empty except for Mrs. Henley and a nurse named Patricia, who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her hand shook as she prepared the needle, and she kept glancing nervously at the floor. "Just relax, dear," Patricia said as she inserted the four. "This might take a bit longer than usual. We like to maximize the collection for special blood types like yours." Instead of a standard 1 pint, they took almost 2 pints, leaving me dizzy and weak. As my blood filled the collection bag, I heard something that made my stomach drop, a low, rumbling sound coming from somewhere beneath us, like a very large animal purring with satisfaction. When I asked Patricia about it, she claimed it was just the building's old heating system. But heating systems don't make sounds of contentment. They don't go quiet the moment your blood starts flowing, as if they're listening. The strangest part was what happened to my blood after collection. Instead of being labeled and stored like at normal donation centers, Patricia immediately took my bag and disappeared through a door marked, "Authorized personnel only." I could hear her footsteps going down, 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 much farther down than any basement should go. When she returned 20 minutes later, she was pale and shaking worse than before. "You can go now," she said quickly, pressing $200 cash into my hand. Same time Thursday? Our client was very pleased with tonight's sample. Client? Singular? What kind of medical facility has only one client for blood donations? Over the next month, I went twice a week religiously. The money was too good to pass up, and despite feeling constantly weak and anemic, I convinced myself it was worth it. Besides, they gave me iron supplements and insisted I was perfectly healthy. But I started noticing disturbing patterns. I was always the only donor there. The appointment slots were never during normal business hours, only late evening or night. And the sounds from below were getting louder, more frequent, more eager. During my 6th visit, I heard something that made my blood freeze. As Patricia carried my blood downstairs, I heard what sounded like feeding. Not human eating, but something animal-like, with wet, slurping sounds and satisfied growls. Then I heard Patricia's voice. "Yes, yes, I know you want more. She's building up her blood supply nicely. Soon you can have all of her." All of me? What did that mean? I tried to follow the sounds, but the basement door was always locked. However, I did notice that the building had old heating grates, and sound carried through them clearly. If I pressed my ear to the floor, I could hear everything happening below. What I heard made me realize this wasn't a blood donation clinic at all. It was a feeding operation. The creature, because it was definitely a creature, not a human client, had specific dietary needs. It required fresh human blood, preferably from young, healthy donors. But more than that, it craved fear, stress hormones, and the unique chemical composition that comes from prolonged blood loss. They weren't just collecting my blood. They were conditioning my body to produce exactly what this thing wanted to consume. Everything changed during my 10th visit. I arrived for my usual 9 p.m. appointment, but Mrs. Henley wasn't at the front desk. The building was darker than usual, with only emergency lighting in the hallways. I called out but got no response. That's when I heard Patricia screaming from somewhere below. Not screaming in fear, screaming in pain, like something was tearing her apart. I found the basement door unlocked for the first time. Against every instinct telling me to run, I went downstairs to help Patricia. The basement was much deeper than any normal building foundation. It was like descending into cave system. The walls were old stone, covered in what looked like scratch marks. The air smelled of copper, decay, and something else, something ancient and predatory. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as I followed Patricia's screams deeper underground. I found her in a large chamber that had been converted into some kind of feeding area. Patricia was on the ground, her arm torn open, bleeding profusely. Standing over her was Mrs. Henley, except it wasn't Mrs. Henley anymore. She had transformed into something inhuman. Her skin was gray and leathery, her fingers had extended into claws, and her mouth had split open to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth designed for piercing and draining. She was feeding on Patricia, but stopped when she sensed me. "Chloe," she said, her voice now a raspy whisper. "You're early, but that's perfect. I was just having a snack before the main course." She smiled, and black blood dripped from her teeth. That's when I understood. Mrs. Henley wasn't human. She was the creature I'd been feeding all along. The blood donations weren't for medical purposes. They were appetizers, keeping her sustained while she prepared for her real meal.
Me.
Mrs. Henley, or the thing wearing her appearance, began talking as she stalked toward me, savoring my terror. "You humans are so trusting," she hissed. 50 years I've been running this operation. Young people always need money, and they're so healthy, so full of life. She explained that she was something very old, a type of vampire that had evolved to survive in modern times by adapting to human institutions. Blood banks, medical clinics, donation centers, places where humans willingly give their blood and don't ask too many questions. "I've been in this city since 1962, she continued, circling me like a predator. "Every few decades, I have to change my appearance, my identity, but the hunger never changes. And your blood, sweet Chloe, is the most delicious I've tasted in years." She showed me a wall covered in photos, dozens of young people who had been donors over the decades. All of them had the same pale, weak appearance I'd developed. All of them had disappeared after a few months of donations. "I keep them weak with regular blood loss," she explained. "It makes the final feeding so much more satisfying. Terror and weakness create the most exquisite flavors. And AB-negative blood, like yours? It's like vintage wine to me." Patricia was still alive but barely conscious. The creature had been feeding on her slowly, savoring her pain and fear. "She's been my assistant for 5 years," Mrs. Henley said casually. "But she's getting old, and old blood is bitter. It's time for a replacement." That's when I realized Patricia wasn't just an employee, she was a previous donor who had been kept alive to help lure new victims. The creature didn't just kill its prey, it enslaved them, forcing them to participate in hunting others. The creature forced me deeper into the chamber, where I saw the true horror of her operation. The walls were lined with restraints, for stands, and blood collection equipment. But this wasn't medical equipment. It was torture devices designed to keep victims alive and conscious while being slowly drained. "I don't just feed once and kill," she explained, securing restraints around my wrists. "That's wasteful. I keep my prey alive for months, taking a little at a time, letting the fear and desperation build. Terror improves the flavor dramatically." She showed me journals documenting her previous victims, detailed records of their blood quality, fear levels, and how long she was able to keep them alive before their bodies gave out. Some had lasted 6 months. Others had endured almost a year of slow, methodical feeding. "You're going to be special, Chloe," she whispered, her breath cold against my neck. Your blood has something unique, a sweetness that comes from genuine innocence. I'm going to make you last as long as possible. She attached Infor to my arm and began the slow process of draining my blood into containers. But this time, she didn't stop at 2 pints. She kept going, taking more and more, watching my face as I grew weaker and more terrified. The fear hormones are perfect now, she said, tasting a drop of my blood. Fresh terror mixed with despair. Absolutely delicious. She planned to keep me conscious throughout the entire process, feeding on both my blood and my psychological suffering. That's when I realized Patricia wasn't unconscious. She was trying to communicate with me through eye movements. She was telling me something, directing my attention to something behind the creature. While the creature was savoring my blood, I saw what Patricia was indicating, an old industrial pipe that ran along the ceiling. If I could reach it, I might be able to pull myself up and away from the feeding apparatus. I waited until the creature turned to adjust her equipment, then used every bit of strength I had left to grab the pipe and swing myself out of the restraints. The Infor tore from my arm, sending blood spraying across the chamber. The creature shrieked in rage and lunged at me, but I was already climbing toward a ventilation grate near the ceiling. You can't escape, she screamed. I know your scent now. I know where you live. I'll find you. I kicked out the ventilation grate and crawled through the ductwork, following air currents toward what I hoped was an exit. Behind me, I could hear the creature tearing apart the chamber in fury and Patricia's final screams as the thing took out its rage on her. The ventilation system led to an old coal chute that opened onto the street behind the building. I emerged bleeding, weak, and traumatized, but alive. I immediately called 911 and told them everything. When police arrived at the clinic, they found Patricia's body drained of blood, but no sign of Mrs. Henley. The basement chamber was empty except for decades of evidence, photos, journals, and blood-stained equipment that proved the creature's long history of victims. The building was condemned, but the creature was never found. She had vanished, probably to set up a new operation in a different city, under a different identity, ready to start the cycle again with new victims. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital recovering from severe blood loss and anemia. Doctors were amazed I was alive, given how much blood I'd lost over the months of donations. They said another few pints, and my heart would have stopped. I've moved to a different state and changed my name. But sometimes, late at night, I get the feeling I'm being watched. The creature said she knew my scent, and I believe her. She's still out there, still hungry, still looking for me. If you ever see flyers offering unusually high payments for blood donation, don't be tempted by the money. Ask yourself why they're willing to pay so much, why they only operate at night, and why you never see other donors. Because some things that feed on human blood aren't interested in helping medical patients. They're interested in keeping you alive just long enough to savor every drop of your terror. And once they've tasted your blood, they never forget the flavor.